Welcome to episode number 55 of the Let's Discuss Gaming podcast. I am your host, Triple J. Joining me is my co-host, Dr. Games 101.
Hey, what's up, guys?
And we're going to do what we do every 2 weeks, talk about the latest news in gaming. You ready to start?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. First story we got. The next Mafia game is in development. Mafia celebrates its 20th anniversary today, and in a new blog post by Hangar 13, the principal minds behind the series reflect on its creation and history while also teasing what's next. Longtime Mafia designers Roman Haledic, who's the general manager, Thomas Harablek, head of production media director, and Alex Cox, game director, sat down to discuss Mafia's entire history and the most cherished moments of the franchise. It's worth a read if you consider yourself a die-hard fan, but the most exciting news from the conversation is the confirmation that the next game in the series is in development. Hablick writes, "I'm happy to confirm we've started work on an all-new Mafia project. While it's a few years away and we can't share anything more right now, we're really excited to keep working on this beloved franchise and to entertain our players with new stories. A few years away is a long time to wait, especially since the last mainline entry, Mafia 3, is approaching 6 years old, launching in October of 2016. But we're happy to see the series continue and are curious to see where it heads next. In 2020, Hangar 13 released enhanced remasters of all three games, the most substantial being a complete remake of the original dubbed Mafia Definitive Edition." What do you think is going to be... have you played any of the three Mafia games that already came out?
Unfortunately, my friend, no, I will admit that, because I could have played Mafia 3 as a demo, especially in my recordings, but I never thought about going back to it until I get all three Mafia games. Because at one point it was available for all three of them for about, as a bundle for about, I would say $60, give or take. And it was a good source of an offer, because you get all three Mafia games, the DLC, the costume packs, etc., etc. So it's like I didn't have the money at the time, though. So back like at least a year ago, at least. And yeah, I wanted to first play the first two Mafias, then play Mafia 3. But I never got a chance to, both time and money, especially money. So yeah, it's I'm sure it's a very good opportunity to play Mafia for the fourth time. This time, hopefully, it's a sequel rather than a different mid-quill type of system. Because it's truth that back in the 1960s and 70s, the blacks of during the Black Panthers and all, they tried to overtake the streets again because of the mafia activity going on in their neighborhoods. And this is Mafia 3 was supposed to be based upon that matter in a similar fashion. So it's a good story. Yeah, kind of, yeah. Because there was actual black mafia back in the 1960s. And there's a movie out there called American Gangster with Russell Crowe and Denzel Washington talking about this matter in a loose term. So it's kind of like, if you watch that first and then play Mafia 3, I'm sure you get a good idea of what's like that moment. Like, wow. So it's good. Heard it's good games. Good stuff.
Okay, well, you didn't play Mafia 2? Because we got Mafia 2 from Games with Gold.
We did?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I got it from Games with Gold.
Well, do you know what year it came out?
I could look it up.
Okay, because when Mafia 2 was on Games with Gold, I must have been still in the hospital at the time, back in 2016, I believe. So it's that wasn't the last year I've been in any form of visitation for mental illness related matters. So it's back then it was different times, and didn't have all the time in the world because I was in the hospital. So, but
it came out in May of 2015.
Wow. How did I miss that? That's weird, because I was still home at the time. I just started going to the gym first time in 8 years back then. And I've been going to the gym since whenever I can. And, yeah. I'll check my library. I'll definitely check my library if I still have it.
Okay. That was the second Mafia game. It was supposed to be the May 1st to May 15th game.
Right.
At least for 360. But, yeah, I have it. Played it all the way through. Okay. The first Mafia, although let's look at what has already been done in Mafia. The first Mafia was the early 40s,
right?
And that was in Illinois. The second Mafia was the late 40s and early 50s, because your character spends a few years in jail in the middle of the game, and that was in New York City.
Right.
Mafia 3 was the 1960s, and that was in Chicago. Do you know what, like, if Mafia was to follow the same path, do you know where the most mob business was like in the 1970s?
The prominent, from what I've read, based on our research, and also looking at a book called "The Rise and Fall of the New York Gangsters." In paraphrasing of the book, I only glanced at it for a few pages. Basically, during the times of 1940s or 1920s into the 40s, is the rise of the gangsters, of the mafia and such, because of the prohibition, everything else kind of create that
right.
family. Then by the 1950s to the 70s, that's when it was prominent in mainstream into the communities, like, from like, far back as, like, here in my town, Jamaica, Queens, to other parts like Harlem, southern Pennsylvania, perhaps in California, those type of areas. That's prominent of mafia activity. And then by after the 2000s, that's when John Gotti and the Gambino crime family started to have problems trying to maintain their little order, because it's been exposed by the mayor Rudy Giuliani firsthand, I guess you could call it like that, and it just created this dissolution between the mafia gangs, and everyone snitching on everyone. And then since the 2010s, we see a reemergence of it. But since the kid, the son of either, it was Frank Cali. Frank Cali was one of the mob bosses of the Gambinos, and he got killed by some average dude within the gang. So it was like an internal struggle. So whatever's going on for the past 10 to 15 years now, it's not steady. It's not as populated or popular to join these gangs. So it's kind of like, everyone's trying to avoid them. In my perspective, that is because. To be honest with you, I heard things about these guys being in these communities for many decades, and it was all about making business, not about trying to start personal wars with one another. So, but I think it's interesting to see that the stories like that in the game are resemblance of what happened for over the last 50 to 60 years. So,
okay, so yeah, I'm trying to find out, but they just keep bringing up New York. Myself, I'm just wondering. I figured they had a timeline. Like the 40s was Illinois, early 40s, late 40s, early 50s, New York City. 60s was in Chicago. I had no idea what happened in Chicago in the 60s until Game Informer brought that up. Their first preview of Mafia 3.
The Black Panthers were around during that time, and there was a Chicago shootout in the 1960s as well. It's around 1969, 1968, or say 1970, give or take.
So I figured if there is a Mafia 4, they're just going to continue the timeline, 1970 and wherever the most mob activity was happening.
If they really want to, if the creators could look back on the history of the mafias, the 5 families here in New York City, it still exists somewhat. But they're not out and about making huge deals with huge activities. But, they can make a sequel to what happened with Frank Cali and other mob bosses like the Genovese crime family, the Lucci's crime family, put like a little bit of spin on it. I think people would like more about it, because they did that with their movie Irishman. That's a 3-hour movie. I never seen the movie, but I saw the trailer. It looks good to watch. But no one's into the gangster stuff anymore, from what I hear. Just based on what radio show hosts are saying. And they're like, because the younger crowd like us, like a younger, we never really lived through the struggle of joining gangs, or struggle of like being part of a gang activity or gang mentality. That depends on who you talk to, what part of the United States. So, yeah.
Okay, so a new Mafia game is coming. It's still a few years away from happening. I figure, I don't know where they're going to go with it, but my biggest guess is that based on the history of the Mafia games, they're going to go to the 1970s, but where the story's going to take place, it could be anywhere.
Oh, yeah. It could be Chicago, it could be New York, California, perhaps even, hell, if they really want to, they can get involved with the Yakuza and the Triads, the Yakuza in Japan and Triads in China. They still exist somewhat. They can do that spin-off of that too. You never know, right?
They had games like based on the Yakuza. I would just seriously. The only thing I would want, that I know I would want right now from the next Mafia sequel, is to be in a place that we haven't been yet. like I said, already had games take place in Illinois, New York City, and Chicago. If there was stories to tell in the 70s in one of those places, in a different place that I didn't mention, have the game take place there.
Right.
But we'll know more as the game continues to get completed, and like I said, it's still a few years away.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Ready to move on?
Oh yeah.
Okay.